get in a long tube with a bunch of demons.
Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John, they're the ones to follow. Get ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
John, that always cracks me up, the Kenneth Copeland line with why he flies in his private jet, because he doesn't want to be in a long metal tube with a bunch of demons.
Well, that's what you used to say about your Amtrak trips across the country, didn't you, Brad?
No, I've never taken an Amtrak. I've never taken an Amtrak trip. Let me try that again. I've never taken an Amtrak trip across the country. I've taken 2 Amtrak trips, one from the St. Louis area out to Kansas City to visit my son and pick up a car that he'd got rid of and I bought from him, and the second time to buy another car. So how's that crazy for taking my Amtrak trips?
Well, you're no Kenneth Copeland because you don't have a negative disposition, Brad. But, you know, metal tube here, metal tube there.
That is John Combest. You know him from johncombest.com. For 23 years, every single day, he puts together this extensive list of all the important stuff that you should be reading, you should be watching, you should be listening, whatever the link is to on his johncombest.show. Don Combest, one more time, johncombest.com show. We're off to a great start, aren't we? At least I'm not. And we put him on the air every morning with this guy.
I'm Casey Kasem.
And we count him down, the top 3 stories of all the stories on today's John Combest. We start off with,
in third place,
let's give credit where credit is due. And let's do it to St. Louis Public Schools, Brad. You and I have had a good laugh over the last several months about the shenanigans coming out of the St. Louis Public School system, particularly how an imported superintendent named Ms. Keisha Scarlett hired her friends. One of her friends that took over for Miss Scarlett was named, or is named, Millicent Borishade. And you and I have poked fun at the fact that the interim superintendent doesn't even have a certification to be a superintendent. Well, Brad, I am pleased to announce that according to the Post-Dispatch and reporting by Blythe Bernard, the interim leader of St. Louis Public Schools, Millicent Borishade, has obtained a temporary superintendent certification from DESE. And even better, Brad, she is working her way to being fully certified. She just has to take a national test to prove that she is qualified to be a superintendent. So this is good news all around, Brad. And I think it's important that if we throw, pardon the expression, a little shade on Ms. Borishade, it's only right when we congratulate her for taking steps to actually becoming a certified superintendent. What say you, Brad?
Well, I have a question about this. Is this like a class you have to take? Or is like if and I know you have to get to become a teacher, you have to, take an education class, all that kind of stuff. You have to major in education. Is this the same thing, like you have to take like a master's or a PhD in like superintendent duties or something like that?
No, I don't think so. I think it depends on the state. And as I read this, Brad, Ms. Borishade had superintendent certification from the state of Washington, of course, and also from the state of Illinois. Now, an important detail was that she spent some time leading charter schools. So talk about a biographical fact that will blow people's mind in Missouri, the vicious fights about charter schools in the state of Missouri. But as I understand it, Brad, in the state of Missouri, if you have a valid superintendent certification from another state, there's reciprocity. So the problem is, or the challenge is, that Ms. Borishade let her certifications in Washington state and in Illinois lapse.
Oh.
So in other words, she can't go to DESE and say, hey, I got a valid certificate in these other states. And they would say, cool, you're good to go. You get what I'm saying?
So they gave her a temp, and she's got to take a national temp, and then she'll be good. A national test, and then she'll be good.
That's exactly right. Now, of course, the other qualifying thing is she could go back and get her certification from other states, but that wouldn't really make much sense. So it is pretty good news, Brad. And, Miss Blythe Bernard pointed out that Borishade is really the only one of that whole cadre, that whole cohort that came from Washington. She's one of 9 folks that Keisha Scarlett brought in. And I think Miss Borishade is the only one remaining. I could be wrong about that.
They all left?
Yeah, I think most of them got dismissed. And also, Blythe Bernard points out that the board has not released details of the investigation into Keisha Scarlett. So as they're looking at, the web of LLCs and contracts in cash that was given out without board approval, the board hasn't released the findings of its investigation yet.
Well, I can solve this whole problem. I mean, it's pretty obvious what's going on here. I mean, all we have to do is temporary Superintendent Borishade. All she has to do is say to one of her underlings, say, "Hey, can you put an LLC together for essentially specializing in teaching people how to be superintendents and passing their superintendent test, and I'll pay you $49,999.99, and I'll get my certification." See, that's all she has to do.
Brad, you should set up your own LLC for business flow because they already gave out money for that, and it sounds like you got a great business flow proposition there. I like that idea.
Right, that take care of those who take care of you. Right? Okay, we done with that one.
Yeah, we are.
Number 2.
Up a notch to number 2.
It has been revealed that there were two Missourians in contention to be named Donald Trump's Attorney General. We already know about Eric Schmidt. We've talked about that here, Brad. And we know that Senator Schmidt withdrew his name from consideration. He confirmed on Monday that he had withdrawn his name from consideration to be Attorney General. But it has been revealed now that one of the other folks that made the final cut was Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey. Yes, only 43 years old, just elected to his first full term as Attorney General. Donald Trump's team was considering Andrew Bailey. Now, Brad, you know who they picked yesterday, don't you?
John, you haven't heard this story, have you?
I haven't heard this. What's the story?
You don't know about this?
No, what happened?
There was a huge, and once again we'll use the word that John liked to use a couple weeks back, huge hubbub in D.C. yesterday where the Explosive Ordnance Division of the Washington, D.C. Police Department was called into the Capitol building. You didn't hear this?
Oh, snap. What happened, Brad?
Well, what happened was Donald Trump showed up at D.C. yesterday, and nobody knew who was there. He sort of snuck in, and he had this thing in his hand, and he pulled this pin off the thing in the hand, and he rolled this thing into D.C., and it turned out to be a hand grenade, and it had Matt Gaetz' name on it. And
no way. You're not saying that Donald Trump threw a veritable explosive somewhere by the name of Matt Gaetz. You're not suggesting that, are you, Brad?
The people on, I listened to NPR this morning, they are melting down.
Melting down. Can you even believe it?
And what was Jake Tapper? Did you hear the Jake Tapper thing?
No, I didn't hear Jake Tapper's comment.
Oh my God. He's like, put the paddles on him and turn the defib on because he's having a heart attack. I mean, he's and here's what's so, to me, and I know there's going to be people go like, oh, okay, here Brad goes again. This is what you call classic disruption, okay? And once again, you go through the history, and there's all sorts of names that pop out. In the last 150 years, we can throw out the names of Thomas Edison. We can throw out the name of Alexander Bell, Henry Ford, Mr. Chrysler, people like that, who essentially took the world and changed it forever, okay? And once again, and currently we have two of them who are going to supposedly, well, at least one of them, Elon Musk, who's going to be involved with the government, not necessarily officially, but sort of unofficially. Now they're saying, well, it's not really going to be a government agency. What's the agency they're going to call it? The Department of Efficiency or something?
Yeah, it's named after Dogecoin, Department of Government Efficiency.
Right, Department.
And you know the joke there, right?
Right, I do know the joke.
Okay,
there.
good. For folks who don't know, there was a kind of a meme crypto coin called Dogecoin.
Right.
And I think it's hilarious that Elon wants to name his department after that.
Right, which is sort of, once again, a funny little tongue-in-cheek, Mr. Disruptor's at again, to the point where it's
That's right.
It's the humor that goes over most people's heads. Now, and once again, here's Trump disrupting things. Now, the Matt Gaetz thing is quite honestly sort of bizarre. Now, explain something to me. I saw this. Matter of fact, I heard this yesterday when I was driving around. I was doing transmitter work again yesterday. And news had just come out. This is like probably 3 o'clock local time. And I think this was at least like 4 o'clock, or 3 or 4 o'clock Eastern time. Okay, already everybody was abuzz on this. Now, the crazy part of this is then last night you look at the news and Matt Gaetz resigned from the House. Explain that to me, John. Why would he do that?
Very simple. I can't take credit for this hot take, Brad, but as somebody pointed out, it's the idea of you set fire to the ships. The idea of you throw your hat over the fence and that way you're committed. And Matt Gaetz here's what a pro Gaetz person would say, that Matt Gaetz says, to heck with the past, I'm all in. I'm not going to use my congressional seat as a fallback. I am all in to be attorney general. Now, a cynic would say that Gaetz is facing an ethics investigation. And if Gaetz leaves the House, the Ethics Commission investigation is moot. It's no more. So, Brad, I guess your opinion on this depends on where you stand on Matt Gaetz.
The whole thing is, let's be honest, the whole thing, to me, this is classic Trump. Now, it's interesting, because I heard somebody yesterday, I heard a very learned government observer say the story of, the mistake that Trump made the first time around was he hired very capable people, but they didn't really like him. And they ultimately turned on him and they didn't have his back. And they said this time around, he's not necessarily looking for the best people. He's just looking for the loyalists. And to a certain extent, you look at this so far and you go like, man, I can see that. Don't you sort of see that as well, John?
I think so. I asked somebody who's largely apolitical what they thought prior to the election. I asked why they thought that Trump, who's a person who was voting for Kamala, I asked him why they thought Trump would be so bad. I said, you lived through 4 years of Trump. It seemed to be pretty good. And this person told me, well, he's going to have worse people around him this time, because the first time he had people in his inner circle that had a smart mind and a decent sense, and now he's picking worse people. And this is a largely apolitical person that waxed philosophic about this.
Yeah, but
I don't know. I mean, again, it's kind of like the Gaetz thing, where you think that whether you think that's good or bad is entirely dependent on your view of Trump.
Well, the sad part of this is, and I guess the sad part of this is, you already see that the Jack Smith deal with Jack Smith, he's going to retire early. He's going to retire before, Trump officially gets inaugurated. And the cases are just imploding. And doesn't that, if anything, really justify the fact that Trump was correct when he says this was all political warfare against, directed against him? I mean, doesn't that?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're exactly right. And I'll go back to what Will Scharf was talking about on Annie Fry's show, which is, you're going to see more and more of these cases fall apart just because the fact that it was based on politics and now there's no political drive to do it. You may even see some of these folks backpedaling or distancing themselves from the cases themselves.
You know what? I mean, it's so sad when you see the government be like this, to the point where, and I know a lot of people hate Trump, but if you take a 30,000-foot view of the whole situation, it was obvious that they were just trying to throw every roadblock they could in front of him to not become president by, the fight. And, you go back and you go like the whole crazy thing. You can, connect the dots. Fonnie Willis hires her boyfriend, and what does he do? He makes numerous trips to the White House. Okay, why in the world, the case that's going on in Atlanta, it's a local case in Fulton County. I believe Atlanta's in Fulton County, isn't it? And why in the world is the prosecutor, a special prosecutor, who's the boyfriend of the PA or the DA, whatever she's entitled, or her title is down there, why is he making trips to D.C.? You know what I mean? It's like, okay, it's pretty obvious that they're trying to smoke him, and then the bizarre thing about, see, once again, the crimeless crime. He gets in trouble because he's overvaluing his assets. But the crazy thing is, I still go back, and I heard this the other day. Somebody resurrected this quote, or what wasn't really a quote, but they were reading this, that Judge Merchan, who oversaw that case, the fact that he'd overvalued all of his assets, said that Mar-a-Lago was worth $18 million. Okay. The sewer lids in Mar-a-Lago are worth $18 million. You know what I'm saying?
And you know what waste, Brad, with 3 minutes left, you know what wasted $18 million?
What's that?
Story number one.
Story number one.
The number one.
It's not every day we have a high-profile Democrat in Missouri talking common sense. But it happens, Brad. And Mayor Quentin Lucas was on our friend Pete Mundo's show in Kansas City. That interview was summarized by MissouriNet. So I linked directly to MissouriNet today. Here's what Quentin Lucas said about the election, Brad. He said, when he was talking about how Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris, he said that Trump was talking about things that affect voters every day, and Kamala Harris was playing some video game on Twitch. Here's what Quentin Lucas said. We saw him at big football games. We saw him at McDonald's. We saw him in a garbage truck. And frankly, he did things that all of us do. I've stopped at McDonald's. I go to football games, right? I'm not a Trump voter. That sort of thing is relatable as opposed to playing Twitch. Quentin Lucas also says that he invited Tim Walz, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, to come to a Chiefs game. Come to a football game, look like a real person. But the Walz and Harris campaign rejected the idea. And Brad, Quentin Lucas wasn't done eviscerating Democrats. This one a little bit closer to home. Here's what he was talking about, the fact that Democrats seem phony. They don't seem authentic. Here's what Mayor Lucas says. Let me tell you what's not authentic. Lucas Kunce's campaign, where basically he ended up getting the same poll numbers that a generic Democrat. We could have found Bob Miller off the street, and he would have done as well as Lucas Kunce and saved everybody $15 million to $20 million. The issue is you've got to be authentic.
Hey, John,
I don't know if Missouri Democrats are going to heed this call, Brad, but by calling out the worst U.S. Senate campaign this century for Democrats and then calling out the arrogance of the Harris-Walz campaign, this is a Democrat that wants to get his party back on track.
You and I talked about this, how the Democratic Party and the Republican Party have done a juxtaposition. They've switched sides, whereas the Democrats used to be like Joe Biden, the lunchbox Joe kind of thing. If we got a problem with that guy, we'll take him behind the work site and we'll just pummel his head until he says, okay, that kind of thing. And it was the average working man's and working woman's party. But now it's the opposite way. You got all the elites, you got all the professors, you got all the NPR people, all the as they call the overeducated class, the tech titans, all the performers, all things, and they're all we said it all along. I mean, and exactly what he said. Here's Trump, working at McDonald's once again
on a garbage truck,
tongue in cheek, because of the fact that Kamala claimed she worked at McDonald's, but nobody could ever say that she actually did there. Then he gets called garbage by the president. He shows up in a trash truck, and you're right. He's pressing the flesh at all these different events. He's pressing the flesh, and what do we see? We see Kamala on stage strutting around with John Bon Jovi and Bruce Springsteen and Oprah Winfrey.
And Oprah.
Right. And it's like, okay, I don't think there are too many guys. I think if I were to go to a job site this morning and, let's mainly working dudes, maybe some dudettes as well too. Let's say they're building a house and then the carpenters are in there framing. And I would say to them, hey, do you guys like Oprah? I don't think too many of them would say, oh, my God, I love Oprah.
I'm a member of her book club.
Right. You know what I'm saying? And nothing against Oprah. But once again, it's one of those things where and if somebody says, well, you just say that because she's black. No, it's not because she's black. She's a woman. Women, I told the story. Matter of fact, did I ever tell you the bra story?
No, Brad.
Okay.
Is this a B block story?
Yeah.
Because we also have a Bill Eigel is giving a little talk tonight, Brad. You might be interested.
This is a B block story. We'll pick it up at the beginning of the B block, and this will show you the power of Oprah. Okay, and this was personally experienced by one of my family members who worked at Nordstrom. I'll leave it at that, and I will tell you the power of Oprah in the B block segment. Okay, you ready for that?
All right. I'm ready, Brad.
I bet you are. I caught your attention when I said the bra story, right?
Hey, I was going through puberty when the Wonder Bra came out. Okay, so Let's just leave that there.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?